Hello, my friends, it's Dr. Schiller, and we are in part two of a video series about why mindfulness training and mindful movement specifically can be so transformational for chronic pain, whether it's physical, emotional, or both, as well as chronic illness. And we started first vid, and watch that if you haven't, but just really redefining what mindfulness is and taking it from being a little buzzword that people like to say to understand that it's a whole different way of relating to reality, that it's a compassionate, discerning presence. It's an ability that everyone can cultivate to really hold your whole experience with receptivity, with caring and compassion that simultaneously tunes into the particular details of what's going on. So, I'm going to be talking about some of these principles of what happens that causes people to develop chronic pain and what we do for it in terms of helping the person heal from the inside out. And I want to just share a case that's kind of illustrative that helped kind of flesh out the situation. This is a particular patient that I worked with a little while back. His name was Jim. That's what I'm calling him right now anyhow. He was in his early 40s. He fell on the job and developed a nerve injury in his hand. And so he had burning pain in his hand that was persistent and started spreading up his arm. It started going up towards the elbow, started getting pain in his arm and his shoulder. After that, things moved up into his neck. He started developing headaches, and he did physical therapy as he was directed by his doctor. They tried on various medications that are good for nerve pain, some narcotic medications, and he got temporary relief sometimes, but things were getting worse overall. The pain really was spreading to most of his body, including his leg. And then he actually started having trouble sleeping. He couldn't focus on his work. He was feeling more foggy and like kind of confused about things. He found his emotions were more reactive. He was more reactive in his relationships, and that was causing him problems in his marriage and work. And he just started developing digestive problems. So this focal injury spread and became a much more complicated process. So what's going on here? Let's try to understand why pain spreads and why people start to develop other issues. And as you understand that, you'll start to understand why your own consciousness and your capacity to hold your experience with presence and compassion and to learn to move that way can be so transformative, so that if you're stuck in that kind of situation, this is part of the way out. So first of all, let's talk about the mechanism of pain persisting and spreading. The first thing to know is that your nerves themselves can sensitize. So in other words, you develop nerve pain or an injury to your hand. It could be a broken bone that doesn't heal. And in some situations, the nerves get more sensitive. The nerve that goes to your spinal cord, it becomes more sensitive so that things that normally don't hurt become more painful. And that can actually affect your processing in your spinal cord and your brain. And I talk about this in more depth other places, but the whole point is neurologic sensitization is one of the ways your body tries to protect you from pain, but it often goes haywire and becomes a secondary problem. And that's part of the disease of chronic pain. The other aspect of this, which we see over and over again, those of us who work with people with chronic pain, like my background is in rehabilitation medicine. And so I see the people who the orthopedic surgeon has seen, they've done their surgery or decided there's no surgery to do. And they give them anti-inflammatories and physical therapy. And they do that for a while. When the patient gets worse and worse, they often send them to me in rehab and say, hey, fix the guy. And so basically I've been doing that for 20 years. And so this is coming from my experience. This is coming from seeing 30 to 40,000 patient encounters, and also from studying all the literature and understanding the basic science and working hands-on with people in various healing techniques. So here's the deal. Protective responses are the issue. Your body wants to protect itself. What does that mean? It means if you put your hand on a hot stove, before you even think about it, you're going to pull your hand back. That's a protective response. It's a reflex. It's at the level of your spinal cord. That protective reflex happens at every joint, and it happens at every level of your spinal cord, and all of the control of your joints and your whole up and down spine, it's all talking to each other. It's one system that's connected through various interneurons that connect to different parts. So it's a coordinated response. If you think about it, Withdrawing my hand, I'm flexing my wrist, I'm flexing my elbow, I'm flexing my shoulder, I'm drawing my shoulder back. If that stimulus is strong enough and intense enough, I might also automatically, reflexively push with my other arm to get myself away. I might extend my legs and my trunk to get myself away. Those are protective responses, and in my experience, those get stuck. Those get locked in, and they become very counterproductive. So let's think about it. Let's say I have chronic pain in my hand. That's like a hot stove all the time. That's sending a barrage of information into my nervous system and influencing my body to try to protect itself. Sometimes that just gets better and it stops. The people who develop chronic pain is where it doesn't stop and it gets worse. So every time I try to extend my arm, every time I touch something, or let's say it's my leg and my foot, every time I put my foot down, my body's pulling it back. So I'm extending while pulling back at the same time. What do you think that does to your coordination? What it does is it messes up your coordination and it causes you to start contracting and co-contracting. So use my arm for an instance. Like when I want to bend my arm, I contract this muscle, my biceps. And when I want to extend it, I contract this muscle, my triceps. When I contract my biceps to bend my arm, there's a reflex that makes my triceps relax so I can bend it smoothly. You may have noticed, like great athletes perform, it's smooth. It's because there's tremendous coordination in their movement patterns. When there's chronic pain and things are getting haywire and getting sensitized, what happens is you get contraction and extension at the same time. And imagine if you're constantly, every time you're moving, you're pushing against yourself. That's part of what develops this secondary muscle and soft tissue pain. And we see it over and over again in the rehab context. And so addressing that is part of the healing process. It goes beyond just the neuromuscular reflexes that I'm talking about, because you also have a connective tissue system. And your connective tissue system is the layers and layers of stringy stuff that some people call fascia, that's made out of building blocks of collagen, that is distributed throughout your whole body. And if you took your whole body and dipped it in some kind of special substance that dissolved everything but the connective tissue, you'd see an outline of your entire body. You'd have really dense connective tissue, like where the joints are, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, slightly less dense at your wrist, but you'd see connective tissue through the bone, between the bones of your forearm. You'd see connective tissue wrapped around your spine. You'd see lighter connective tissue wrapped around every organ of your body. Your liver, your heart, your spleen, your intestines are wrapped in layers of connective tissue. Connective tissue penetrates into those organs and creates the sort of scaffolding on which your blood vessels and your nerves and your lymphatic drainage organs or vessels work. And so it's a ubiquitous system, head to toe, bones to skin, and it is contractile. It responds to experience. It responds to pain. Myofascial pain is talking about muscle fascia pain. It's changes in the muscle, the neuromuscular reflexes. It's changes in the connective tissue. And that's part of what develops this secondary pain that a lot of people get when they get chronic pain. So there's a neuromuscular level, there's a fascial level, and all of the inputs and outputs of this system are in a neural network that's in your whole being, okay? And so in Jim's case, he started off with pain in his hand. It started to spread to his arm. It spread to his shoulder and to his neck, developed headaches, started spreading down his back. That is a spreading of sensitization. It's a spreading of sort of maladaptive neuromuscular reflexes and maladaptive soft tissue changes. And that's part of how he got in trouble. So in Jim's case, this is the man I mentioned before who started off with nerve pain in his hand. It spread to his forearm. It spread to his shoulder and went up to his neck and his back. He tried PT, physical therapy. He got some massage. Things kept progressively getting worse. And then it started involving most of his body. It affected his mood, it affected his digestion, it affected his cognitive processes, his thought processes. He wasn't able to function, he was spiraling down. So what about that situation? What do you do for that? So we're going to cut to another part. Catch up part 2 of this video, and we're going to continue.